what if you were paid for adopting healthy habits? Would these habits stick, or would you lose interest once the incentives are withdrawn? Economic incentives to drive fitness is not new. Many governments have experimented with it in the past. Now the Indian government plans to adopt measures to promote fitness as well. The government think tank Niti Aayog is drawing up a plan. You're listening to TLDR. I'm Deepavali, and with me is my co-host Garima.
Hello everyone.
And today we dive into India's lifestyle disease problem and how policy can push us to be healthier.
Yeah, but how did we get so unhealthy? How did urban India got so unhealthy? So unplanned urbanization, increasingly sedentary lifestyles in the cities led to a major spike in non-communicable diseases burden in India. These diseases now account for 63 to 65% of all deaths in India, which is a huge hike. The four major non-communicable diseases are cardiovascular diseases, cancers, chronic respiratory issues, and diabetes. These diseases have increased from causing 37.9% of deaths in 1990 to over 63% today. India is witnessing an alarming rise in early onset metabolic disorders, with children and adolescents getting affected by early stage diabetes, hypertension, PCOD, PCOS, and thyroid issues. With rampant urbanization, people spending more hours at their workplace, the diets have also changed. The consumption of processed, calorie-dense foods, high in fats, sugars, and salt have also increased. In addition to this, high prevalence of tobacco, alcohol, and other intoxication has added to the problem.
Thanks for laying that out, Garima. Now, we think habit changes should be intrinsic, but external pushes also matter. Just being aware of a fact is not always enough. Somebody has to nudge us to action. Economists have used this kind of economic incentive in policy design for ages. Financial incentives, even small amounts of them, can induce behavior change. First thought that occurs to people when they hear of such measures is that why should you pay someone for a habit that benefits them? But there's a deeper context to this. Like Garima, you just explained, lifestyle disease is a huge growing healthcare burden. And remember during COVID how medical infrastructure had collapsed. And although lifestyle diseases aren't such an epidemic of such scale, but gradually they are the leading cause of death in India. And these are entirely preventable. So this cause should be taken up seriously. Now, besides the healthcare burden, a high impact of non-communicable diseases also cause economic losses, not only to the individual, but also to the community. There are medical bills, there's money that goes into treatment, there are lost wages because you can't show up for work, there's lower productivity at work, there's high stress, then workplaces also reinforce unhealthy habits, urban planning downgrades health and fitness, municipal mismanagement such as garbage lying on the roads, it discourages outdoor activity because everybody cannot go to the gym to be healthy. So all of this is responsible for India's current health crisis. This is what justifies government intervention and a policy push for health-related behavior change. Corporates, workplaces, civil authorities, food and health regulators, everybody is a stakeholder. They should all be involved in such a drive. And good health basically benefits all of us.
Yeah, right. And exactly working on this very same template, a lot of other countries have also introduced such campaigns and they have seen actual results. Because, for instance, in Japan, after the introduction of the Metabo law in 2008, obesity rates among Japan's elderly population have stabilized. Under this law, local governments and employers, they measured the baselines of citizens between the age of 40 and 74 during their annual checkups. And the law does not fine individuals if they fail, but the corporation and local governments are fined if they fail to meet the national targets for reducing metabolic syndrome. These things, they drive the employers and the companies to proactively offer digital coaching, diet counseling, and other health programs to their employees. And local authorities have reported that citizens after this drive are now more conscious of their health, and Japan's obesity levels remain lower compared to many other developed nations. Similarly, Sweden also uses sin taxes on sugar, alcohol, and tobacco, and now is reforming its tax code to, subsidize preventive lifestyle habits. And many Swedish employers use a tax-exempt wellness hour, allowing their staff to exercise during working hours. And now, to improve the situation, Sweden's researchers and economists have proposed removing VAT on fruits, vegetables, and whole grains, while adding extra tax burden on sugary drinks and processed food. Apart from Sweden, UK has also done something similar. So the UK's National Health Service has aggressively tackled smoking and obesity through direct financial rewards. They also offer up to 400 euros in shopping and lifestyle vouchers to pregnant women if they successfully quit smoking. And New Zealand, on the other hand, they also run a nationwide subsidy program where the first-time gym goers or those who have not been to a gym facility or any health facility in the past 12 months receive a 40 to 70% discount on their standard gym membership at several facilities. So yeah, I think reducing rates of gym memberships, yoga classes, giving better infrastructure like better jogging tracks, better parks can boost activity, physical activity like these. And of course, higher taxes on unhealthy stuff can also help in reducing their consumption and building healthy habits.
Absolutely, Garma. In fact, the examples from Japan and Sweden really stuck with me. So you also mentioned the gym subsidy in New Zealand. Now, all of these are basically monetary incentives that help build healthier habits. The expectation is that when people see the benefits of a healthy lifestyle, they won't break the habit once the incentive is withdrawn. Now, let's dive further into this. I just want to mention that, subsidy programs, how can they work? Taking off from the New Zealand template, the program can be open to first-timers or anyone who's not been in the gym for 12 plus months. That's the model that New Zealand follows. Now, the New Zealand program is not incentivized by the government, but the exercise industry has gotten together to pool their money and build a habit that will ultimately benefit even their industry as well as the public. Now, there are many ways that health incentivization programs can be designed. Suppose the target is weight loss. You can have rewards for attending classes, and it could be given at the beginning of the program, at its completion, or in increasing or decreasing tranches as the classes are attended. Alternatively, the incentive could be given dependent on actual weight loss targets that result from following the program. So different scheme designs will lead to different outcomes. Another way is that some suggest instead of offering reward programs, one can also induce some feeling of loss if participants fail to do something. And this might in fact be more motivating than rewarding them by the same amount, because we react to losing money more intensely than in gaining money. So instead of providing a 500 rupees reward for each of the 10 sessions of a weight loss program attended, it may be more effective to provide the whole amount, like 5,000 rupees at the end of the program, with all missed sessions attracting a painful loss of rupees 500, let's say. So this is how monetary incentives can work. Not just the government, but the fitness industry, health, food industry might partner with corporates and workplaces to pool their resources and fund such programs. At the community level, of course, the government must step in and fund such campaigns because public health is a major national issue and an economic burden on governments.
Yeah, you're right. And moving forward, if we focus on economic and psychological nudges that already exist to drive better health outcomes, I mean, this is actually a very good way to make people more aware and help them make better life choices, better health choices. These days, now several schools and colleges have, in partnership, in collaboration with either government or, health people who are in the health industry, they've started installing a board which highlights how much sugar or oil an eatable example. A can of carbonated drink contains 8 to 10 spoons of sugar, while a samosa or some fried snack contains 2 to 4 tablespoons of oil. So this will gradually make the youth realize how much sugar or oil they're consuming with each bite, and help them make better and more informed choice. Other thing would be making food labels more clear. Instead of writing difficult, chemical names to understand, what exactly they are and what they do, the focus should be on, writing the first 3 ingredients list on that packet, so that people know that, okay, these 3 are the primary ingredients and rest everything can follow in that hierarchy.
Right.
So, for example, if you want to buy peanut butter, the ingredient should be at least 99 to 100% peanut butter and not 10 other ingredients including sugar, salt and several stabilizers. And of course, increase the tax on unhealthy food. That is, I think, the best measure that the government can make. Unhealthy foods, processed food, sugary drinks, and of course things like cigarette, alcohol and other such stuff. So make them inaccessible for the masses to reduce the consumption. I think that can be a very good way to cut this. And so these small changes, I think, can have an effective result.
Absolutely. I mean, more transparency can help us make more informed choices. But coming back to the economic incentives part, most people will still wonder whether these can actually create lasting behavioral changes. That's always the first and last question on this subject, because people think that once the money is withdrawn, the healthy habits will die out. However, many studies confirm that economic incentives do bring about lasting behavioral changes, but the financial perks have to stay for its impact to be visible and enduring. At least for a while, it should stay. Its benefits must not only pay off at an individual level, but also at a community level for the public to buy in. The goal is to ultimately withdraw such incentives or implement them only for those who actually need it. For example, those who are prone to substance abuse, addictions, or who are obese, etc. Now, this might seem out of context, but let me remind the audience that there was work done by Nobel Prize winners Michael Kremer, Abhijit Banerjee, and Esther Duflo, who showed conclusively that low-cost initiatives do indeed reduce poverty. Now, that there are efficient ways to introduce habit changes that not only have short-term benefits, but also lead to long-term prosperity. Their free insecticide-treated mosquito net program is very famous, so is their child deworming program. These had shown extraordinary benefits at the community level over a period of time. Now, coming back to the economic incentives for fitness context, countries are already economically progressing countries that have largely educated and urban crowds. They are beginning to have fewer children, and demographic changes are expected to register in a couple of decades. So it is critical that our youth take better care of their health. Non-communicable diseases are increasingly affecting 26 to 59-year-olds. The elderly are, of course, a vulnerable population, so setting them aside, the NCDs that are affecting younger people, that is a huge cause of concern. So therefore, any program that instills good habits is probably worth a try. However, more will be clear once the Niti Aayog's roadmap for the incentivized fitness drive is available. So that was all on this episode of TLDR. Thanks for tuning in, and we'll see you in another episode.
You are listening to Earshot Podcasts. Find us on our website, earshot.in, on YouTube at Earshot Media, and download our app, Earshot, Indian Podcast app.